Good morning, YouTube, or afternoon, or whenever I get this video up. It's a little bit after 10 o'clock, and I'm just doing some neighborhood street side parking in Berkeley. And I have an appointment for the vet for Mickey, and I'll probably do a video about that on his channel. I'm probably not going to do it on here. But I did set a goal to post more often on my channel, whatever that means, and I don't really have time for a detailed edit for anything in my archives or to shoot a van tour today of my own van. Now, for people who've been around this channel a while, you might remember I had this van when I first got it and redid the interior. I didn't tour the van probably for over a month. So it isn't like I don't get done tour the van. That's just not what I do. Sorry if you're used to that from other channels. When I am ready and I feel like I have a nice place, because van tour videos kind of stick for a bit, and I don't just want to throw it together in a parking lot or on the side of the road. I just don't. I'd like to spend a little bit more time on that than just randomly shooting it for the sake of shooting it. But anyway, like I said, Mickey needs to get to the vet. I am parked on the side of the road in Berkeley, and what I love about Berkeley is I know it. There's nothing inherently better about Berkeley than other places. There are vibes I like about Berkeley, and there are things I hate about Berkeley. They frustrate me and get on my nerves. But I don't think anybody who lives anywhere doesn't have those frustrations. A lot of times you're just looking for the place you like better than other places to call home. And I think there will come a time that I will be calling Nevada home. I just don't feel ready to make that move yet, as far as figuring out how to get an address there, and sort of shift, at least legally, my residence over to that state. It's something I've been considering. It's something I've been looking into. It's something I've been researching, to kind of make that happen. But I do see myself shifting over to Nevada as my legal address, in the near future. I know anybody who's familiar with the RV community knows a lot of them run to South Dakota. And the thing about South Dakota is I just don't see me going there frequently. And I'd rather have a residential address that's accessible to me. Either a neighboring state or a state I enjoy, i.e. Oregon. I really liked Oregon when I was in Oregon. Nevada's obviously right next door to California. And so I see myself staying in a western area if I decide to change residential addresses. But when you're not actually physically moving to an apartment or a house within a state, you really need to research ways people have done it, the best way of doing it, what the actual laws are to become a resident of that state, etc., etc. When I moved into the van, I was just already a resident of California, so the easiest thing to do was just to stick with that. I already had, when I started registering my vehicles, I already had an address, and since then I've been able to have an address I can use in order to just paperwork. We want to know where you're at, that kind of stuff. All that stuff was just easier to set up because I was already a resident of California, and I was able to make things work because I am a resident of California. It is hot. Where did this heat come from, man? But anyway, it has not been hot. I've been in jackets the last couple of days, and now I'm what is this sweat, man? But the point is, I wanted to talk about the fact, hopefully it's the title of this video, that I'm about to do a little bit of apartment sitting, and I'm nervous about it. And it's not about the apartment itself. It's more about the fact that I know her neighborhood, and I'm more concerned about my particular house. I went and cruised the neighborhood yesterday just to see where I could put my van, because I cannot park it in the complex, which is pretty much the problem. As far as having a key to her apartment, watching her apartment, accessing Mickey, you little jerk. And we're back. And he's just being a cat. The amusement never ends with a cat. He's just feeling himself this morning. He has a bunch of energy, so we're gonna have to get him out for a little bit on the leash. Just let him walk around, expel some energy, jump on some trees, etc. Um, but anyway, getting back to the point is, there isn't really like a street like this. Like this street where I am right now, I can literally park here all day. Probably be here for a few days because there is like no regulated parking on this particular street. It's a little bit of mix of residential and industrial. Like there's a couple of factories here and there, some stores. It's a weird little nook that I only know about because, like, I've lived and worked around this area, which is one of the advantages to being, like, an urban van dweller when you're trying to do urban camping, especially in a place that you've already lived and worked around, is you already kind of have a clue. You don't need to do a lot of searching to figure out where to go, unlike when you're traveling, like when you're actively traveling into unfamiliar states. Now, mind you, I had no problem readapting to like a couple of days of it was like a week. I spent a week like in the Denver area, had no problem parking. I spent like a week in like a couple of other little city, urban town areas and really had no problem parking. Like I was able to find those streets, but I also could be anywhere. And now I'm at the position of I am actively watching a specific address and looking for parking nearby. So, like, how far away do I want my van to be located? And not because I'm worried about walking to it, but because I'm worried about just it being very far away. Like, I used to pet sit for this woman when I still lived in my minivan. And the great thing was there was plenty of street parking where I could literally look out the window and see my vehicle, my home. You know, like I said, this was when I was living in the minivan. And that felt good. Like, that's what I cared about. It wasn't like, oh, I have this apartment with, like, plumbing and, like, all the regular normal stuff. Like, at the end of the day, I care about my house. Like most people, and I do want to take care of this other person's property until I can turn it back over to them. But I care about my house. Like, that is my house at the end of the day. And so I'm a little nervous about the parking situation for my van while I'm just being a body moving in and out of her apartment. And so, like, it's something I'm excited about because it'll give me an opportunity really to get some things done in a more settled space than I've been able to do. And at the same time, I'm nervous about it because of my vehicle. And, you know, it being kind of exposed to possible towing more than anything. I'm worried about towing more than break-ins. Like, my biggest fear is getting towed. A break-in would suck, but as long as it doesn't, like, break the vehicle, it's just something that would be annoying, an expense I don't want to take on, but my home isn't gone. If it gets stolen, that would obviously, if the vehicle itself gets stolen, not objects in the vehicle, but if the vehicle itself got stolen, that would be kind of scary. If it got towed, it would be scary. Anything where the vehicle is gone and I suddenly don't have a home is more scary to me than, like, a break-in. Or something like that. Like, that's more scary to me than a break-in. I would not want a ticket, but I'd rather get ticketed than towed. Like, if it was a situation where I really just missed something on the sign or something like that, or I didn't realize I was parked somewhere that I wasn't allowed to be parked, my biggest fear would still be getting towed more than ticketed. I would hate to be ticketed because obviously nobody wants to put out that extra money. But to actually, like, just have your home gone, like 100% gone, is much, much scarier to me. And when it comes to break-ins, I know, like, this sounds crazy, but I'd rather be in the vehicle during a break-in than not in it because the potential for damage is probably lower. I think in most cases, people only break into cars that they think are empty, whether they actually are or not. They think they are empty. They are given the portrayal of being empty. And people do drive RVs and camper vans and such to their friends' houses park them outside of their friends' houses or in the neighborhood, and then are actually physically inside the house and with street side parking, which is why I think people should calm down about being caught sleeping in their vehicle. But with street side parking, if your vehicle is giving the appearance of just being a legally parked car, most people assume it's empty, even if it's an RV. Unless in a neighborhood like this, I don't think it's true, because there are obviously RVs that are being occupied. And it's known around here that that's a thing. There are tent cities. There are blocks where RVs have just been parked for the longest time that people are trying to get rid of. The whole politics around that is a whole separate condition. But the condition of there are RVs that people live in kind of exist in this area, so people might make that assumption more readily. But let's say you have a really nice Winnebago Travato or something like that. That's one of the fancier Class B's, very modern, looks like the common built out Sprinter, ProMaster, etc. build. Looks in that category from the outside. Looks really nice, really high end. And if you see that vehicle parked in a neighborhood that generally doesn't have a problem with RVs on the street or huge homelessness issues or anything like that, if there's a certain, I don't know, for lack of a better term, standard to the vehicle where people would assume everybody in that area is going to somebody with a house, and you see this really nice high-end RV outside. In this case, we're using the Winnebago Travato, a Class B, a really nice tricked out Class B that you can buy straight from an RV place. Most people are going to assume whoever drove that RV there got out of that RV and went to visit their friends and are maybe staying overnight. And so there isn't an assumption that somebody is in that vehicle living out of it. Even though a lot of people who live van life and such, they prefer sleeping in their own beds. And so but I have a guest bed that's inside. So a lot of us will choose to sleep in our own beds. But the appearance of the empty vehicle makes people think the vehicle is empty. And so what I'm saying is nobody's, in most cases, unless you have a really bad crackhead, most people are breaking into these vehicles assuming they are empty. And I like the idea they would be wrong, because more than likely, these people are more likely to run off, having discovered somebody was in the vehicle, than to continue to try to either steal from the vehicle or steal the vehicle. And I'm not going to say this is universally, true, but it's just something I internally believe. And so the idea of my vehicle sitting really far away from me without me in it for long hours does make me nervous. Whenever I'm house sitting or pet sitting, or did in the past, it's harder to do now because I have a pet. It's much easier to get pet and house sitting jobs when you don't have a pet, because there isn't the consideration of how your pet mixes with their pets, if they don't want pet hair in their home, whatever the situation. If it's just house sitting for somebody who doesn't have pets, a pet actually makes it harder to get house sitting and pet sitting jobs. I have worked with dogs who could not live in a house with a cat. They would have killed the cat. And I've had dogs that would have been all right, cool, another cat in the house. And then there's also how Mickey would get along with the other animals. But it's harder. It's harder. So it's something I've kind of given up on, even though it was the thing I did, honestly, a lot early into my van life. In fact, the first video I ever posted on this channel when I was living out of my car, I was doing a pet sitting job for a dog and 2 cats. And living there for the time that the people were gone, because I was in the house with the dogs and cats, and I fed them and did all that stuff. Long story short, let's cut that off. So that's my nervousness. Now that I've rambled, this is just a rambling video. So if you stuck around this long and you're about to write a comment about how rambly and all over the place this video was, yeah, That's what these type of videos are. And when I don't have a time to do like a more complex video, I may just start dropping videos like these, where I have conversations about something on my mind. But I've literally sat here talking too long. And Mickey's probably wondering why I got us all set up to drive and then didn't drive anywhere. That's probably why he's acting like a little nut job, because he was in his spot and he was ready. He was like, okay, the van's about to start. And then I started shooting this video and we didn't move. So, he's going to be not happy today. He is not expecting to go to the vet, obviously, because you can't tell him that. Like, be like, it's the doctor's visit today. All right, like I said, I'll probably do more about that on his channel. I don't know if it's going to go up today. It might. Bye, everybody. See you in the next video.